Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone who has joined us this evening. I am your proud Holyoke Public Schools Receiver and Superintendent, Dr. Alberto Vasquez Matos, and I would like to welcome you to our live webinar. Joining me this evening are Valerie Anir, our Chief Instructional Officer, Mr. Anthony Soto, our Chief of Finance and Operations Officer, Ms. Mary Ann Carrier, our Chief of Student Pupil Personnel, and our Director of Health and Wellness and Nursing, Ms. Cynthia Carbone. So I want to thank them for joining me this evening. They will be assisting during our question and answer session that will take place after my return to school update. Families in need of interpretation, please click the interpretation button found in the box at the bottom of the webinar screen. It has a globe symbol and select the Spanish channel. Familias participando en esta tarde que necesitan interpretación, por favor cliquea el icono bajo la pantalla donde dice interpretación y escoge el canal de español. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Our agenda is about return to school update, some target start dates, explanation of our new school hours and schedules, facilities updates, and then we'll go into questions and answers. So I want to first say thank you for the input and the ongoing input since we started this journey around, for this school year in August. And as well, thank you for the input around the target dates for bringing more students back to school using the hybrid learning model. In reviewing the health metric trends and reflecting on the feedback from our stakeholders, knowing that as a district, we meet weekly with our Department of Health and review the data and making sure that we make informed decisions that best serve our community. However, we have decided to revise the reentry target dates. We believe this is in the best interest of maintaining the health and safety of our students, families, and staff. It is important to note that target start dates are not finalized. There are dates that we are planning for with the understanding that they might have to shift based on our ongoing review of the current health data. We are revising the original target dates so that our early learners will begin to transition into in-person learning in February. More details will be shared by the end of next week. We will continue to monitor our health metrics, partner with stakeholders, the Board of Health, and use data to inform our dates to bring more students back to school using the hybrid learning model. I would like to share more information about our change in school hours. This change allows the district to increase synchronous live instructional time to meet the needs of students and following the updated DESE guidelines. It allows us to develop busing schedules to safely transport students to and from school and maintain all safety protocols and appropriate distancing. Many variables go into planning the structured learning day, remote or hybrid, with the goal of creating the best educational experience for our students despite the challenges the pandemic presents. We as a district are continually striving to create more meaningful and engaging learning opportunities throughout the school day. It is not our expectation that any child is sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours, but rather students have ongoing engagement in structured learning throughout the day with the goal of improving the learning experience for all students. In the December 29th Holyoke update, we provided information about the newly adjusted school day starting on January 19th. It will be structured based on the uniqueness of the school, program, and grade. In response to the formal and informal feedback from students, families, such as LPAC, DPAC, the SPAC groups, and teachers, as well as the updated DESE guidelines, this would allow students to be more engaged with their peers and teachers, and will offer more small group instruction for additional support and include time for necessary breaks and opportunities for asynchronous and synchronous live instruction learning time. The original school schedule included synchronous learning from 8 a.m. until noon and asynchronous learning for up to 2.5 hours daily. The schedule provided students with 6.5 hours of learning daily. The schedule change will now offer students a 6-hour school day with 4 to 5 hours of synchronous learning scheduled throughout the day that includes movement breaks, lunch breaks, recess for younger grades, hand washing breaks, transition, and cleaning time. Wednesdays will follow the current schedule of no more than 3 hours of synchronous learning for grades K to 8 and no more than 4 hours for grades 9 to 12. Synchronous learning on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays is as follows. Grades K to 2 is 4 hours daily. Grades 3 to 8 is 5 hours daily. Grades 9 to 12 is 4.5 to 5 hours daily. I want to also take this opportunity to give kind of a facilities update of major work that was done throughout this academic year as it relates to making sure all our school buildings and classrooms are up to grade as it relates to the safety protocols that are set by the federal CDC guidance as well as the state guidance. And so here are some highlights from our facilities team of some of the safety measures and upgrades that we've made in our district. Indoor air quality tests were completed in all schools through a third-party contractor, and the results of the indoor air quality tests were all positive, good, with no air quality issues in our schools. With the help of our city, is using its CARES Act funding to outfit every single classroom in the district with advanced HEPA air filtration units. We've installed 50 ionizers in various rooftop HAVOC units, high efficiency MERV plated air filters installed throughout the district. Makeup air increased at the individual components to maximum capacity. Over 160 windows that were not operable before were professionally restored and repaired. Over 100 portable HEPA air purifiers were purchased and distributed to areas of greatest need. Duct cleaning is being performed at 4 locations identified as needing this work. We also, as part of our safety codes, will be introducing testing for our students and or staff that have symptoms and are able to get tested immediately at our schools. And we continue to provide PPEs and all of the safety materials and resources for all our staff that are currently in-person learning, such as our cohort C, as well as those who are in central office buildings, and as well as throughout our schools. So now it's time for question and answer portion of the session. I'm going to ask you to please type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I will read the questions aloud, and then we will provide answers. If you have additional questions after this session, please feel free to email return-to-school@hps.holyoke.ma.us. So I'm going to ask my team to join me now. So the first question is, given that there have been multiple instances of teachers and paras in the HPS system showing up to schools and in-person learning with COVID symptoms or COVID-like symptoms, in some cases testing positive after arriving with symptoms and having close contact with others, and in some cases refusal to be treated, and thereby effectively blocking contact tracing and implementing COVID positive protocols. And the understaffed schools have little to no backup staff to draw from. How can you assure this trend of adults coming to work with symptoms will not continue? Great question. Cynthia or Marianne, do you want to take this question?
Cynthia, I don't know if you want to start us off and I'll jump in as well.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. That was a very long question, Dr. Vasquez. And I think what it boils down to is asking, what are we doing? What do we have in place in terms of safety and staff safety? And we take that very seriously. And so individuals who have symptoms are required to contact their supervisor and their building nurse. And in doing so, the building nurse works with that individually very closely about their symptoms. If you check our website, you can see the guidance that we've provided for staff members. We have done some direct mailers out to all staff, identifying what are the symptoms, what to do if you have symptoms, when to stay home, which of course is at any time that you have any symptoms, right? So we've done a lot of work around that in terms of educating staff members about what the expectations are. We don't want anyone in buildings who has any of the COVID-related symptoms. If an individual is at work during the day and is symptomatic, immediately they're to notify their supervisor and the nurse. The nurse would assess, and the staff member would be asked to leave the building. That would be the typical procedure that's in place. And that certainly could happen, right? Somebody could come to school and have symptoms. So it's all of our responsibility to keep our workplace as safe as possible. And so that's the responsibility of the individual. And it's also the responsibility of colleagues, right? To have those conversations with one another, to establish that workplace environment where we understand what the expectations are, where we respect one another, and where we do the right thing. And so at any time an individual is symptomatic, they are asked to leave, and we recommend testing.
Thank you. Marianne, you wanted to add something?
Cynthia covered it very well. So thank you, Cynthia.
All right. So next question is, I'm sorry if this was said, I didn't hear, will written materials be available? Yes, we will post this presentation on our website under the Return to School update. So please check those websites. We can also include it in the Holyoke update that will go out very soon. I feel like we've been given information from the district, but nothing from our schools. As we approach hybrid, will schools have detailed communications and information sessions that cover health and safety, as well as the learning model? So it is my expectation that schools will be communicating to their families. They will be used. We provide the framework, and then they actually then provide additional information as it relates to the uniqueness of each of the schools, program and grade. Valerie, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, just that some of our pre-K to 2 families would have received communication or will by the end of this week regarding cohort assignment. And as we move into the transitioning, schools will begin more regular communication with everyone.
Okay. Val, I think this question is for you. How is pre-K impacted by the extended hours? What would it look like?
Okay, so our pre-K hours for the AM time, it does change. The AM and PM time changes for tier 1 or 2 schools. In the communication that was sent, I believe it was there, but I can share that again right now with you. For schools in the first tier, which would include, I'm trying to look for ones that might have pre-K, which would include Metcalf and White, the AM cohorts are 7:55 to 10:25. The PM or afternoon sessions are 11:25 to 1:55. The full day, any of the schools that have a full day program, some of our dual language full day pre-Ks would run from 7:55 to 1:55 with the rest of the school. So that's for either tier. Whatever the, if there's a full day pre-K, they will run the same hours as the school. The half-day pre-K times for tier 2 are 9 a.m. to 11:30 for the AM cohort. The PM cohort will run 12:30 to 3. And again, we can make sure that that goes out to you again if you need a reminder. And the full days would run from 9 to 3 for tier 2 schools. We do have VOC run pre-K classrooms. If your child's enrolled in one of those, they will run their current operating hours. I believe that they are currently running 8 to 4 p.m.
Thank you, Val. Next question here is, what are the criteria for the staff to be eligible to take a COVID test? So I'm assuming the COVID tests in our schools. Cynthia, do you want to speak to that, to the Bionex testing that we currently have?
Sure, yes. So we will have access to the Binax Now rapid test. And so individuals, either staff or students who become symptomatic during the day would have access to this test. We're also very fortunate in Holyoke because we have our Stop the Spread website, the testing site. And so Stop the Spread is available free of charge to all residents of Massachusetts. And what you can do is just, if you type in Stop the Spread Holyoke, it will come right up and it will show you their hours at the sites. So it's another great opportunity for testing. And that's the PCR testing for that.
Thank you. At what junctures will student parents be able to switch their chosen learning mode from hybrid to remote or vice versa?
I think that's for me, right, Dr. B? So that's a great question. When you receive your initial cohort assignment letters, and it depends on the grade bands when you receive those, they do say that you have an option to reconsider your cohort assignment from in-person to remote or vice versa. And so the letters that go out do have a deadline. The pre-K to 2 letters are asking for feedback by the end of next week. I think the 13th, but anywhere between the 13th and the 15th for those responses are fine. Each group of new letters by grade level will have a different deadline date. So it's about a week and a half, a week to a week and a half from receiving the letter that you have to provide input, and we will review that and make sure that there's space and plan and make adjustments accordingly. That is the only time that we are currently opening up a change to cohort. Of course, down the road, if your child is in a particular cohort and you wish to change, while we wouldn't be pushing out a full large scale request for parents and families to respond about changing cohorts, we will take a look at individual requests on an ongoing basis. A lot has to go into making those changes, and it deals with making sure we can, if you're looking to come in person, we have to make sure that we have the space in the grade level classrooms to ensure that we have maintaining safety protocols first. And so there'll be about a week or two in between a request to a response. So for right now, at initial cohort assignment, you have about a week to respond back with a change. And of course, anytime you feel it necessary, you can request, but we will have like a 2-week turnaround to ensure all safety measures can be in place before approving changes.
Okay, thank you. Third grade has 5 hours of synchronized learning, which is the same or more than 12th grade. Can you elaborate why this seems excessive for third grade? So Valerie will follow up with me, but please recall when we talked about the schedule, the structured day, while it seems 4 to 5, it's a 6-hour day. Most of that synchronous time also includes breaks, movement breaks, as well, hand washing breaks, transition, and cleaning time. So it's not our expectation they'll be sitting there, consecutively for 5 straight hours or 6 hours. They will be some movement breaks, again, activities, lunch breaks throughout that time. Val, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can, and I won't go into too much detail, but we've actually asked, the schools are currently creating their schedules. And so we have some samples, and I can share what a third grade might look like. I won't name the school because these are still in development, but I just want to reiterate that mask break. So whether you're remote or in person, you're learning together for grade 3. And so if students are taking a mask break or a movement break or a brain break, students at home are taking a movement break and a brain break as well. And synchronous learning doesn't mean I'm 100% facing the computer at all times. It means I need to be able to hear the teacher. I might be given some independent work as a student during my math block or during my morning meeting or during my social emotional learning time, collaborative work time. And I just need to be able to hear when the teacher calls us back to full group instruction. And so we want it to be very balanced. While 5 hours seems like a lot, it's not happening consecutively. It will be split throughout the day. Students in third grade, some will start with a morning meeting, which is a community building. There'll be interactive read aloud, maybe some writing. They could move into their foundations or phonics lessons, go into a social emotional learning group and work on some further community building and second step or great body shop lessons, go into direct math instruction, then have independent math practice. So independent math practice is considered synchronous, but I could be working on my own and not necessarily in front of the screen. Again, brain breaks, mask breaks, movement breaks, recess, lunch, specials. We still want access to arts, technology, gym, PE, like movement. And so it's going to be a more rounded school day for them. And while 5 hours seems extensive, please note that our schools are developing really careful schedules to make sure that the learning is spread throughout the day so that there's opportunity for some breaks in between. It also allows us, as Dr. V mentioned earlier in his presentation, to extend our small group instruction time. And so currently during the asynchronous time, or when students are doing self-directed learning, some of our teachers in every school are having some invitational intervention or enrichment groups happening. And we are finding that the engagement in that much needed instructional time is really low. And so one of the reasons we're spreading the hours across the day, across that 6-hour day, even though it's not 6 hours of synchronous, is to help support student learning in those small groups. That was a lot that I spoke on, but what you referred to was one of our third grade school schedules. And just know, even without like the initial movement or brain break, and those are written right into the schedules, students will have time for movement, independent work, and group work, even within each of their learning blocks.
Thank you. Another question here is, will students or staff that may have been exposed be tested with the rapid antigen test and then placed in a separate location until the results are completed?
I think that one might be for me. Yes. So we have isolation rooms available in every school, and we also have a backup isolation room as well. And so individuals who are symptomatic will be offered the BinaxNOW rapid test. And if they are staff members, whether they are positive or negative and they are symptomatic, they would leave the building right away after the test. Students that test positive, their family would be contacted. They would wait in the isolation room, and then the family would come and pick the child up. And that's pretty much what it's going to look like. And all of the rooms are established, they're furnished, and there's a plan in place for monitoring the rooms as well.
Thank you. Another question here. How will you handle full-time remote students? Will they be taught by the teachers they have now, or will you have a remote team? What is the percentage of students expected to remain remote? Does this play a role in your decision-making? So I'll answer some of it, the beginning of this question, and I'll ask Valerie to join me. So it does play a critical role in our decision making, and that's why the surveys that we send out to families around options and preferences and choice is very important, because that allows us to do accurate classroom rosters and teacher assignments, because we also have to look at teachers that with specialties, as well as also accommodating staff needs that may surface as well as part of this pandemic and the decision making that goes into our staffing. Val, do you?
Yes, so I can share a little bit of data with you that might help put this into some perspective. Ideally, we'd love to separate our staff out and have certain staff members teach our remote only cohorts, and then other staff members concentrate on the in-person learning. We are able to do that a little bit with pre-K and grade K. When those students do return back, they're essentially becoming part of cohort C. We feel that our youngest learners should be part of that specialized instructional group and will be in person 4 days a week. And the schools that are able to, and there are a little, I should say, there's a bit of an asterisk here where we might have to do it differently in a couple of buildings. Dual language is a consideration. Also, if we could not safely distance the students. But in the majority of our pre-K and K classrooms, we are able to have live instructors teaching the students in person, and then other teachers assigned the remote cohort. That's the integrated, our integrated hybrid model. For the other grade levels, unfortunately, we're using a live stream model. And that allows the current classroom, and I know this was a concern of parents, some parents like, will my child have to change their teacher? Will they be able to remain with their teacher? Are they going to be assigned a different cohort? And we know that it's really important to maintain our social connections during this time, particularly for our children and our students. And so the live model has been selected for the rest of the grades, for grades 1 through 12, in an effort to support the social interactions that they've already made in the communities our teachers have built with their classrooms, in addition to allowing students to maintain those connections with their peers. What happens in a live stream, and we're continuing to develop some tools and resources for teachers and guidance on what the practices should look like for a live stream. This would be where you and I in the same cohort or same classroom would attend class together, whether we're in person or not. And so it does require really savvy staff, and we have excellent educators in Holyoke, and we're trying to develop the best supports for them to be able to manage how do I engage students in person and those who are remote together. How this is a model that is used across the country. It's one of the more predominant models that you see used across the country, and in Western Mass, our neighbors are using this as well, those who are in a hybrid model. And it allows for the teacher to differentiate the groupings. They have live time with the students. There's time for students who are in person and remote to interact through Google Meets or through Zoom. There's time for students who are in person to have some independent work while the teacher's working to support the virtual joining or the remote students. And some of the reasons that not only is this one of the predominant models that we see has been successful across the country, but also our data. Currently, 40, because I believe part of your question was the percentage of students that we see remaining remote. Currently, I'll break it down by grade levels for you. In grades pre-K to grade 2, 46% of families have responded that they want their child to participate in person. So they would be in person 2 days or 4 days a week, which means that 54% or 44%, right, 44 have decided that they're remaining remote. In grades 3 through 12, we have recently submitted a survey. Our response rate is low, so we know that these numbers will change. We had a 28% response rate to the survey. Of those who responded, approximately 46%, about 44% for grades 3 through 8, and 46.5% for the high school students responded that they want to be in person. And so we're almost at half of the students and families have selected to remain remote, which is which was another factor taken into what model is going to work for our students the best. I hope that answered. I know it was a lot of information all at once.
Thank you. How would we provide subs for these people who have to leave because of symptoms? What is the sub plan so far? So right now we are using our internal folks to be subs in a situation where someone has to quarantine because they have symptoms or have tested positive. But that's as we plan out for hybrid, we are recruiting for what we call permanent subs to be able to cover those classes. And so we have posted job descriptions to be able to make sure that we have a sub pool that we can actually use in the time of a teacher that needs to be has to be quarantined or it falls ill. Do students have to take the new vaccine in order to go back to school, or is it just physical like usual?
I think that's me again. So right now, the Moderna vaccine is for ages 18 and over, and the Pfizer vaccine is for ages 16 and over. And these are the vaccines, of course, that have an initial injection. And then for Moderna, it's 28 days later. And for Pfizer, it's 21 days apart, the shots. So these are the only age ranges that have participated in the clinical trials to date. And so that's why we have those the ages of the 16 and the 18. So at this time, there is not a vaccine available for children for COVID. Now, that's not to say that families aren't going to want to get their child's flu shot, right? And that's something that we've had tremendously positive response across the district with families making sure that their children are protected from the flu. That's something that all families can do, and it's something that the state of Massachusetts has required. So the state of Massachusetts, whether our families are in person or remote as their learning options, the state has asked that all children school aged get their flu shot. So if you're one of the few families that hasn't addressed that yet, there's still time, and we ask that you do that. And that's a way that families can protect their children.
Next question here. Why are children with IEPs not going to be allowed to go back in both cohorts like most other school systems? Why are we treating IEP kids the same as non-IEP kids?
I saw that question. I was just getting ready to start typing an answer in case we didn't get to all of the questions tonight, because that's a very good question. And I'm glad there's a number of special education questions that are coming up. As we're in right now, remote model with our cohort C in person, we are looking at our infrastructure and ability to service our high need students. So not just special education students, but our EL students, students that we know need more support. As best we can. We are looking at all of the data we receive from families that are choosing in person, so that we can school by school determine how many students we're able to bring back in a hybrid model. We're thrilled right now that we believe, based on the data, that we would be able to accommodate most pre-K and K students in a 4-day week model and not a 2-day cohort A or B model. We're looking at the same data as we're getting that information back from families. So if we do have space available in schools to be able to have some of our students with more significant needs in both A and B cohorts being able to attend 4 days a week, we absolutely will be pursuing that. So, if that's something that that would be a good fit for your child, if you are choosing the hybrid model, we'd ask that you reach out to the special education team leader in your school to voice that. And we'll be looking at all of those cases as we're looking at the numbers for hybrid learning. I know there was another question about special education, so I'm just going to jump in while I'm on, because it really coincides with with planning, because we are trying the best we can based in with the models that we're in to be able to service our highest need students. We know that this is not ideal. It's not ideal for anyone right now. We're really trying to find that balance to successfully having our students in person and being able to stay open. The last thing we want is to bring back too many students too quickly. We don't want to have to shut down our schools. But we're really trying to be as thoughtful as we can. But please know that we are absolutely every day considering the needs of our highest need students and how we can get our students in front of teachers as much as possible for our families that are choosing hybrid. Again, it is family choice. We've had a number of families reach out asking if they still have the choice to be remote if they're a student on an IEP, and yes, you absolutely have that choice. So know that is your choice, and you can work with your special education team leader in your building around what services will look like if you choose to continue to be remote.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
You're welcome.
So are we definitely returning in person? What if cases in the area continue to rise exponentially? So that's a great question. Our goal is always to bring students back in person. However, our return to school plan had 3 different structures or programs. We had the complete in-person hybrid and then complete remote to be able to pivot depending on the data. And so as we were planning to right before the holiday break to bring students to a hybrid model gradually by grade bands in January, in late January, looking at the data and the number of cases, we needed to kind of pause and kind of say, okay, let's wait and look at the next set of data, which will take us into February to open the hybrid model for our youngest learners. So we are continually looking at the data and the cases, and that will drive a lot of our decisions, unfortunately, until more vaccines are available to our community and cases are a place where we feel that it is safe to bring back more people into our building, more students and staff into our buildings. And so it's important to note that that this is kind of the way of work for many of us, because there's no control over the virus. It has no boundaries and it has no schedule. And so we have to kind of look at this on a day-to-day and a kind of a case-by-case basis. So I do appreciate the patience of the parents and the community, our teachers, and as well, I appreciate the work of the staff and the teachers and the principals during this time. So just there's a comment here to please ask parents to update their contact information. We say that every time in our Facebook Live session, so please make sure. Um, Another question, concerning younger children regarding supplies and materials for use during school hours, what does the school day consist of regarding hybrid learning? Concerning younger children regarding school supplies and materials for the use during school hours, what does the school day consist of regarding hybrid learning? So that information is dependent on specifically on students' needs, the program, and grade. But if you are in need of any type of supplies or materials, you can reach out to our office, or you can reach out to the school to ask specifically for what materials you would need for the day. I do know, and Ms. Carey can speak to this, that, you know, for students who are in our cohort C who require supplies, the supplies have been provided for them for their classroom needs.
I read that. I just wanted to jump on because I read that question a little bit too around like how are supplies being provided? We just want everyone to know that we are taking all precautions. We're working with our teachers. So for our cohort C students that are already in person, we have individual bins for students so that they're not sharing materials. Materials that do need to be shared are typically rotated on a either daily or weekly basis. So that materials can be cleaned down, for example, like book bags that might be shared. We do have cleaning protocols that are in place so that materials are cleaned in between student use, so that materials aren't being shared directly from one student to another. So we are ensuring that we have enough materials and that we have enough storage bins, what have you, to be able to keep materials separate for students. And so for any materials to come back and forth, the only thing that we would be asking to come back and forth to school would be the Chromebook or iPad device that was issued to your child in case they need it both at home and in school.
Okay, and so another question here. This screen is moving fast. I'm so sorry, this is going pretty fast. How are we implementing contact tracing? If a person is diagnosed with COVID, how far back within their contact history do you go? Who is contacting those that may have come in contact with? Will the whole class have to quarantine if a classmate or teacher is COVID positive?
Okay, so this is of course on a case-by-case basis. And with regard to contact tracing, we go back 48 hours prior to the onset of symptoms. And so we look at close contact, and that's just defined by being within 6 feet of another individual for a period of about 10 to 15 minutes within a 24-hour time span. And so our nurses are the contact tracers throughout the district, and we work very closely with the Board of Health. And so our nurses would ask the individual those kinds of questions. Who have you been in close contact with? We define close contact and talk about that, and ask also within their household. Maybe within their household they have members that either work in Holyoke Public Schools, or there's children within their household that attend school. And so that's another piece that we look at as well. And then we're required to reach out, and that's an in-person contact, an in-person connection, that we reach out to the close contacts. And then we follow up with them. We recommend getting testing, and then so those individuals become part of our caseload as well.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the time now. I know there are quite a few more questions. Know that we have captured those questions. We will be responding to each of those questions. Some of them are actually, because the way the screen goes, the flow, repeated questions, we will follow up with those questions. If there's a name, we will follow up with the individual as well. And so I want to make sure that that everyone knows that we will respond to questions that were not answered during this time of gathering and collaboration. So again, thank you for joining me. I hope this session was informative for all of you. I look forward to having more of these opportunities to communicate with our school community. Please keep checking our website. Our website keeps track also of the cases. That is information, as well as all of the safety measures, the videos that we do as we continue to monitor and do what we need to do to create safe environments for all our students. Again, thank you. Please have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend, which is coming up. And thank you for your support, your patience, and dedication to Holyoke Public Schools. Have a great evening.